A couple of weeks have passed for our two survivors. Sky's now been here for over 250 days. Ordo for not much less than that. They're more determined than ever to find a way off this island. They've been surviving off eggs since they found those ducks, but unfortunately the eggs have been hatching more often than not. It makes for messy dinner preparation. A week of peace and quiet has been broken by raiders from the Breaksos tribe. At least it's only two of them this time. As soon as they approached the island, Sky and Ordo went out to meet them. Unfortunately, the very first arrow launched by the raider hit Ordo squarely in the chest. It cracked her rib and left her bleeding. They deployed smoke and they retreated around the corner. Sky held the corner while Ordo tried to deal with that wound. Turns out the smoke may have ended up hurting them more than it helped, but after a bit of a trade, the first raider was down and the second one was running for their life. Before Ordo could fully recover from her wounds, another raid has already arrived. This time it was from the West Terra, attacking from the south. Alongside the raid, another person has arrived, offering to help. Maybe he came with the raiders and decided to betray them at the last second. It's not a big raid, but may as well accept him for now. Make sure our survivors aren't injured too badly. The two raiders were killed rather quickly, even before the new arrival could make it to the island. In the end, his help wasn't necessary, but may as well take his steel weapon and send him on his way. Surely he won't need that anymore. The new room on the west side of the island is the next big project that we're going to try to finish. The floors are about half done, but we still need to get bridges up for all the walls. Eventually, we're going to have to move the smelter over into this new room. That means that we're going to need at least 3 heavy bridges. It would be nice to also move the electric stove over, so we're going to need 3 heavy bridges for that as well. But first things first, let's get the rest of the walls up and actually finish the room. Well, a group of vultures have flown out of the island. It's nice being able to go inside, lock the doors, and not worry about these manhunting packs. We can just keep fishing and ignore the outside world for a little bit. While that was going on, a combat supplier from Frunyuba has arrived. We don't have very much to trade with them, but that'll at least clear up the vulture problem pretty quickly. Alright, they killed off all the vultures and haven't ran for it, so let's take the opportunity to trade whatever we can with them. Looks like we do have a couple weapons that we can get rid of. They're offering almost nothing for the bow, but at least the shotgun is worth a bit of silver. We can spend that on steel later on. The very next day, another group of raiders have arrived. It's only 3 of them, but they are fairly well armed. On the bright side, once we take these guys out, then we can get a decent amount of steel from their gear. The first one took a lot of damage on the approach, but they didn't drop. That might end up being a bit of a problem. After the front raider finally dropped, Ordo went to the south to flank, only to take 2 bullets right through the torso. One of them penetrating the lung, and the other one the kidney. She is in a massive amount of danger here. She can't afford to take any more damage or she might die. Sky held the door, and with a little bit of help from Ordo, they managed to take out the second raider and send the third one running for their life. It wasn't enough to let them go, though. They had smeltable items, so Sky finished the raider off and gathered all the items that she could. There's blood all over the island after that last raid. What an absolute mess. Ordo's wounds are tended to, but she's still going to be resting to recover more quickly. While that happens, Sky's going to work on smelting down all the new items that they gathered from the raid. Hopefully that gives enough resources to at least continue the room expansion. And that's unfortunate. One of Ordo's gunshot wounds has become infected. Sky's gonna have to stay on top of tending this, or Ordo might die. At this point, it would be a massive setback to lose Ordo. She can continue to stay on bed rest to try to give her as much of a chance as possible to survive. The new room isn't finished, but there is enough space to at least move the smelter over for now. May as well set it up while we can. At least it does free up a bit more space for cacti to grow out in the front of the base. Sky's treated the infection again, giving a 97% quality tend. That's going to help her get even further out in front of this infection. It's only at 28% while her immunity's already up to 36%, so things are starting to look a little bit more reassuring. Even still, better keep her on bed rest until the infection is gone. Four days have passed and Ordo has overcome her infection, but now a new threat has arrived. Pigskins from the Confederacy of Lulam. It's only 3, but their equipment makes them quite a bit more dangerous than the previous raids. One of them even has grenades and armor. The armor is going to make our machine pistols quite a bit less effective, and those frag grenades could instantly take out one of our survivors, or it could easily destroy the solar panel. Luckily, the grenade pig has charged out in front of the raid, giving us the opportunity to focus on them and ignore the others. That pig took a huge amount of damage, but it's finally down. That should make things quite a bit easier now. The second raider also had frag grenades, but without the flak armor, they don't pose as much of a threat as the first one did. Alright, the second one's down as well, and the third one's running. It would have been nice to get the revolver, but they were a bit too quick, and they got away. Let's get to work smelting down all that gear, and then start working on cleaning this place up. We don't have an air conditioner built yet, and there's no wood for a passive cooler, so this could get rather dangerous. Sky should have plenty of heat protection from her clothing, but Ordo is not so lucky. We might be able to force her to swim if the heat stroke does get too high, but other than that, we don't currently have a way of mitigating it. The temperature is already up to 150 degrees. That sounds absolutely terrible. Unfortunately, it looks like the ducks have taken the worst of it, and both have collapsed from the heat. There's nothing we can do about that, sadly. Somehow, they managed to fall asleep in that heat, and the temperature dropped overnight. Well, Ordo managed to survive for now. But the ducks were not so lucky. We've been having just terrible luck with ducks. The first pair died from starvation, and now the second pair died from heat stroke. Maybe we're just never going to be able to keep pet ducks on the island. The heat wave is still in full effect, but now, on top of that, a volcanic winter has arrived at the island. Well, that should at least reduce the max heat a little bit. Hopefully enough that Ordo won't be at risk of dying anymore. They have collected enough resources to finish the exterior bridges for the new room. Now they can put walls on top and then roof the room in. There's still quite a bit of that floor that's going to need to be installed, but at least it'll fully function as a room once the walls are done. And now a group of donkeys have arrived to replace the ducks. If only they could lay eggs. Unfortunately, there's not nearly enough grass growth here to keep the donkeys alive. We could just release them, but the sad truth is, the survivors need those resources. Alright, pemmican tech is finished. It would be absolutely fantastic to be able to start producing pemmican, but we don't really have any way to produce vegetarian nutrition, which is required to actually craft the stuff. Let's set up a build to craft it, just in case we do get some from cargo pods or maybe from a bulk goods trader. A couple more walls have been built, and now all we need is 3 more to finish the room. Progress is terribly slow on the island, but when it does happen, it feels incredibly satisfying. There we go, now we just need a door and the room is done. There's not much sense in having 3 separate rooms. We can move the cooking into the other room and double the space for the barracks and storage. That's also going to free up a few squares for building more bonsai pots and increase our daily wood output. May as well throw in a few more shelves while we're at it. That's going to increase the storage space quite a bit. It really does look a lot better without that wall in the middle. And now the door is built and the room is ready to go. Well, mostly ready. It's got a few water tiles left, but at least the smelter is a lot safer than it was before. Much better than just sitting outside. Ordo is still a conflicting ideology, and as of yet, we haven't done anything to try to fix that situation. That being said, the time has finally come to try to deal with it. The only way to really convert her is going to be to imprison her and then manually convert her using prisoner interaction. Once she is fully converted, she can be released and then she's just going to automatically join the colony. The downside of that is that she is going to get a mood penalty for being imprisoned, and we're going to be down upon for defending against those raids. If things do get really bad, we can always release her temporarily, just to defend and then arrest her again. Well, it looks like even after just one attempt at converting, she's already at 72%, so this shouldn't take too terribly long. Speaking of raids, already one has arrived while in the process of converting. This time it's the Kinro of Shogun attacking. It is only one Edikine, so hopefully this won't be too much of a threat. Sky should be able to handle it alone. The raider does have a knife, so Sky's going to have to do everything she can to avoid getting into melee combat. If she does, she's likely going to die. She managed to land several shots, and a few of them hit critical areas, even 2 right into the heart. Now she just needs to kite for a little bit, and the raider will collapse from blood loss. Alright, there we go. The Edikine's down and the island's safe again. At least safe from raiders. While Ordo was in prison, she came down with a bad case of gut worms. We could micromanage the treatments and force Sky to tend her every so often, but instead, let's just focus on letting her get converted. Then we can treat her gut worms after she's released from prison. Ordo's usually on plant duty, but while she's a prisoner, Sky's gonna have to take over the job of chopping down all these bonsai. After that harvest, there's enough for another shelf. Let's get that built now. You have to imagine that during this period, Sky has been reminded just how important Ordo has become on the island, and she remembers now what life was like before her friend arrived. Going back to being alone and having to do all the work by herself would be an absolute nightmare. You'd think that would be enough to let Ordo go and let her believe whatever she wants to believe, but at the end of the day, Sky believes she's doing what's best for Ordo. It's difficult to say whether or not that's true, but Sky certainly believes it. Sky's been hard at work converting Ordo, but she's still not quite there yet. Meanwhile, a group of dromedary have been waiting around out in the deeper waters around the island. Sky's decided to go out and try to hunt a few of them, then she can bring them back for food and leather. She did take out quite a bit of the herd, and now she just has to haul them back, all by herself. Sure would be nice to have a bit of help with it. With all that on her mind, she went back to converting Ordo. She did manage to get her down to 32%, so it won't be too terribly long now. It turns out the frustration of all these thoughts swirling around her head became a little bit too much, and Sky has snapped. The final straw must have been trying to haul all these dromedary in by herself. As a result, she's turned and decided to punch one of the dromedary corpses into a fine mist. Well, it seems like an awfully strange way to purge her stress, but at least it's not a huge price to pay for catharsis. It's taken a while, but she's finally gathered enough wood to start working on expanding the floor in the new room. 2 more bridges are in, only 8 more to go. That's quite a bit of wood, and at the rate they're gathering it, it's going to take a little while. After nearly 6 days imprisoned, Ordo has finally been convinced that Sky's ideology is the true ideology, and she's converted to her way of thinking. Not a moment too soon in Sky's mind. She can finally be taken off plant duty again. Now we can start working on treating those gutworms. Truth be told, it probably would have been a much wiser decision to deal with it while she was a prisoner, but here we are. The first 10 was 109%. Really only 2 more of those and the gutworms will be quickly gone. Let's try to fill in these last 2 holes in the main room. There's no need to fish here when we can just send the survivors up into the new room to fish. And may as well throw in another shelf, move the bedrolls down as the floor gets added. Ordo's been busy fishing since she was released and has been rewarded for her efforts with a rare catch. A human skull. Well, that isn't exactly a valuable reward. When so many raiders have been dying in the area, it does seem inevitable that a skull would eventually wash up and be caught while fishing. Either way, pretty creepy. The Empire is asking for help protecting one of their crashed shuttles, yet again. This time they are offering something rather substantial, a unique legendary revolver named Sharp Widow. It has piercing rounds and a pistol brace, but it is ornamental, so it has reduced damage, but all in all, it's absolutely a better weapon than what Sky's currently using. Let's go for it. The shuttle crashed in the same place that it usually does, and the raiders have arrived as expected. This time it was only 2 of them. At least it'll end up being an extremely low risk and high reward quest. The first one fell quickly, and although the second one began to run, the survivors chased them down and took them out. The steel is just too valuable to let them get away. The smelted items, the wreckage resources, and the legendary revolver together make this one of the most valuable quests we've received so far. While the 2 survivors were cleaning up the mess, another raid has already arrived. Just in time to test out this new revolver. The first Ideological dropped before closing the distance, and the second one already went running for it. That was really easy. Unsurprisingly, it turns out it's a pretty nice revolver. After all that, there was enough steel to finish building the heavy bridges necessary to move the electric stove over into the new room. They can fish and cook in the same place now. That'll be really nice. Not only will it make food production a bit more efficient and clean, it'll also free up space in the main room for more bonsai and a bit more storage. There was plenty of plasteel from that last crashed ship that we haven't used yet. Let's replace the wooden door in the new room with a nice new plasteel door. For now, we can close in the floor, all except for one hole that they can take turns fishing in. They really only need to keep 9 or 10 fish around at the same time for cooking. There's really no point in fishing up more than that. Fishing with 1 pawn at a time should produce more than enough. Well, Ordo's back to researching now, but we're getting to the point in the run where none of this research will be useful for anything. Pretty soon we're going to just deconstruct the research bench and repurpose the resources for something else a little more useful. Truthfully, we really only need to make sure that microelectronics is finished so we can progress through to the high-tech research bench. Next up, we can get rid of this last animal flap and put a wooden door in its place. The plasteel door would have gone here, but there's still a wooden bridge under it, and we haven't got around to upgrading it to a heavy bridge yet. Eventually, it would be nice to replace all these wooden bridges with heavy bridges, but that's going to be quite an undertaking that we just do not have enough resources to start with. For now, it makes more sense to use the steel to build new heavy bridges and expand the base, rather than replace those old ones. Let's hope that doesn't come back to burn us later. Literally. And the Braxos tribe has come back for more. This time they brought even more raiders. Little do they know, we've upgraded our weaponry since they last were here. While his friends were dying, one of the raiders charged towards the solar panel and decided to start a fire. Meanwhile, the rest of the raiders took massive damage. The fire starter charged for the door and immediately got one shot by Sky's new revolver. The tribals are running for it, but now we need to put out this fire before the solar panel gets destroyed. Destroying one solar panel definitely does not seem like a worthwhile way to die. And as a reward for defending the island, all of the bonsai trees have become blighted. That's just wonderful. A few more days have passed quietly. Sky and Ordo spent their time fishing and chatting. On the 6th of April, May, a bulk goods trader has arrived. It is a tribal caravan, so they've only brought wood, but we do have some silver and a pile of leather to trade. So let's get as much wood as they're willing to offer. 155 wood? Yeah, that'll do. Now we need to figure out what to use all this wood on. Well, another room expansion is an option, but before then, it's finally time to build that chess table that they've been talking about for so long. Wait, do they even know how to play chess? Well, they'll figure it out eventually. With all these shelves, the base is finally starting to look neat and orderly. The shelves really do help clean things up. Well, figuratively speaking. Next up, let's start on another base expansion. Eventually, if we stay long enough, we're going to try to encircle the entire island with bridge and build a structure all the way around. Then we can keep the central area for cacti growth. We could even move the solar panel out onto a heavy bridge and wall that in. Toward that goal, let's start expanding the large central room to the east. We've really been expanding our bonsai production. We have 14 total pots. Now we can expect about 14 or 15 wood each time the trees reach 40% growth. Previously we talked about the stats of the revolver, but we never took a look at the artwork, so let's take a peek at that now. An engraving on this weapon is shaped like an ash tree. The work is infused with the idea of quietude and is done in a minimalistic style. Strikingly, there's a P far from the main subject. Well, minus the P, most of that seems well suited to our current situation. It's a little unclear how the P fits in, but the rest of it makes a lot of sense. Makes you wonder if they created the engraving specifically for our survivors. Great. The Braxos tribe is trying again. They just cannot get enough. They've had pretty terrible luck so far, but they just keep at it. It's 4 of them with bows. They've rushed the island and decided to just trade volleys with the survivors. We managed to pull them back a little closer and they fell right into our trap. As they got closer, Sky and Ordo managed to peek out and pick them off one at a time. This time they went the entire raid without taking any damage. That's awesome. The 2 survivors felt pity on the tribals and they went out to tend their wounds. 2 of the raiders got up and started making their way off to safety. Having grown tired of fighting, Sky and Ordo gave them no resistance and let them just return home. Unfortunately, instead of returning home, the 2 regrouped with other raiders from their tribe, and the very next day, they formed a second wave to raid the colony. The 2 that escaped were still badly wounded, and much slower than the others. As the rest attacked, they were left far behind. Sky and Ordo waded out into the water in hopes of routing the raiders before they reached the walls of the base. While they were out fighting, the temperature began to rise significantly and a heat wave set in. Seems like the water should keep them cool for now. It won't, but it should. They managed to deal a fair amount of damage, but not enough to send them running. The 2 lured the raiders all the way to the other side of the base, leaving a door open for them to enter. Ordo blocked the door and Sky fired her revolver through, killing them one by one. After the first 4 fell, the remaining 2 raiders, the 2 that Sky and Ordo had allowed to live, reached the base. This time, they weren't feeling quite as merciful. They immediately killed the first and chased the other out into deeper water. Another shot from Sky's revolver and the remaining raider was dead. Not wanting a repeat of events, the 2 set to finishing off the raiders and then began the process of cleaning the island up. There was at least one positive result from all this. They managed to acquire several steel weapons that they could smelt down and turn into more heavy bridges. The heatwave is becoming a bit too serious, so we're going to have to cancel the plans to build more bridges and use that wood to build a passive cooler. Maybe with all that steel, we can finally build an electric cooler, not have to rely on wood to cool the base anymore. We didn't end up using all of the wood, so let's use what's left over to at least build a few more bridges. Next up, let's deconstruct some of this jade fence and put a new wall up. Using this strip of land for the wall will at least help cut down on the cost of building heavy bridges. There we go, first steel wall of the new room is built. Next wall on the south is going to require quite a bit of steel, but at least we can get that started. Let's go ahead and build the bridges and see what's left over. Man-hunting crabs have swam up to the island. Let's keep the survivors inside for now. Dying to hungry crabs is a particularly horrifying way to die. Let's avoid that. The two survivors have been wearing their current clothing for quite a while now, and the durability is really starting to drop. The dusters have good enough stats to keep wearing until they're destroyed, but the rest of the clothing should get replaced to avoid the mood penalty. For now, we have enough dromedary leather to make a couple shade cones, so let's get Sky working on that. This really has been a firm reminder that this island badly needs a crafter. Both Sky and Ordo are just terrible at crafting, and they keep producing very low quality items. It would be really great to finally get normal or better clothing being made consistently. A couple more visitors have arrived at the island, only to be met by those angry crabs that have been sitting outside. Not exactly the warmest of welcomes. Well, that's what you get for not helping our two survivors finally get off the island. They have been here for so long and no one has been willing to help them. Turns out even the friendly people in the area are not that friendly. Most visitors have wanted to kill them, and the Empire has been so needy and refuses to help. Speaking of people wanting to kill them, another raid has arrived. This time from West Terra, once again attacking from the south. Curious. They brought a shotgun, a revolver, and a machine pistol. This is going to be pretty dangerous, but at least it'll provide a lot of steel if things go well. Sky went out and managed to take out the lead raider before they could even return fire. Yeah, so far so good. The machine pistol raider began to return fire, but was shot several times by Sky, while only managing to fire wildly into the wall. Ordo made it outside, only to catch the last raider beginning to run for it. The two managed to finish off the raiders and then began work on collecting the weapons. The weapons and armor combined will provide a substantial amount of steel. It should be enough to make quite a bit of progress on the new room. It was enough to construct 4 new heavy bridges. 2 more, and then we'll be able to wall this in and take down the old wall, giving us plenty of new space in the central room. We're going to need the space in order to construct a high-tech research bench. It looks like a couple of sheep have moved onto the island. And before they could even begin to graze, the animal curse has continued. First starvation, then heat wave, and now a shuttle crashed right on their heads. Poor sheep, they deserve better. But it's come to be expected from the Empire. They don't really care about anyone but themselves. Now, at least the raid was quick and simple. And we received plenty of resources from the wreck, but the sting of their callousness will not go away quickly. The one upside of that event is that we now have enough plasteel to build a new door and finish the remaining bridges. Now we just need one more bridge, and then we can deconstruct these walls and expand the room. There we go, that was pretty simple. The room looks wonderful now, minus that big hole in the floor. Now we have to figure out what the new layout is going to be for our tables and storage. There's quite a few things that can move around and reorganize to try to improve the overall storage space. There's still 58 plastiels sitting around after that last crash shuttle, so let's go ahead and try to use that up. Two of these walls can be taken out and upgraded to steel. It is slightly wasteful since we're only getting half the steel back, but better to have non-flammable walls and try to repurpose at least some of the steel. There we go, those are much better walls. Next up, let's try to move our tables around and make space for the future high-tech research bench. They also really ought to build a comms console to try to trade with any passing ships. Maybe even try to call for help. Once they finish the new research bench, they can change their focus entirely to getting off this island. A small raid from the Confederacy of Lulam has arrived. It's not particularly notable except for the fact that one of the pigs has come equipped with a low shield. If we play this just right, we should be able to strip the shield off the pigskin and use it for ourselves. We need to try to lure them both in without actually shooting the one with the shield. The first one took severe wounds before reaching the door. If we kill him, the other will rout and we won't be able to catch him, so let's allow him inside before we knock him down. He fell right in the doorway, and surprisingly, the other pig didn't rout. It continued all the way inside, and our survivors were able to lock him in melee to avoid activating the shield. They knocked the remaining pigskin down and stripped all the equipment. That gives us more steel and a low shield pack to use in an emergency. That ended perfectly. Three days later and another raid has arrived. More tribals. tribals rushed around the walls of the base, but managed to do absolutely nothing before they were brought down. The interesting thing about this raid was there was a teenage girl that survived the encounter. The two survivors took pity on her and decided to rescue her. Unfortunately, she's not a crafter, so it's still undecided whether or not she can stay. But for now, she can remain as a prisoner until we decide what to do with her. After 2 days of recovery, she's finally back on her feet and able to feed herself. They left her in the barracks, so she'll be able to wander around and deal with her own needs for now. Initially, it seemed like a really good idea to keep her as a third survivor, but realistically, it would be far better to try to get that crafter as the third survivor. And this new pawn doesn't really have any useful skills that would benefit the island, other than just being a meat shield. And truthfully, that's a really cruel fate to subject her to. Well, no more cruel than what the tribals would do to her, but that's their problem, not ours. Let's allow her to heal up a bit more, then we'll send her home. She can rejoin her family, and we can continue our search for a new crafter. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for updates on all future videos. For those of you who made it all the way to the end, please consider checking out my Patreon to help support the creation of more videos like this one. You'll find the link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and see you for the next one.